Hey traders, welcome back to another PineScript lesson. Today's lesson is covering a question I got from Joshua. So Joshua has a script that is generating too many alerts and it's getting a bit messy, and he wants to find a way to separate the alerts so that he can select which ones trigger and which ones don't. Now this is a little bit tricky in PineScript, but thankfully very recently the TradingView development team released an update to PineScript that allows us to have more control over our alert functionality. So today's lesson is going to be a bit of a deeper dive into alerts. So let's open up the Pine editor. So the script I have here is just something I knocked up really quickly. All it does is detect when the RSI goes overbought and oversold and checks for bullish and bearish candle patterns when those conditions are met. Now the reason I'm using the RSI again for this lesson is because it's irrelevant what your conditions are. And this was the simplest way I could think of to trigger signal alerts so that I can demonstrate how to actually use the alert functionality. So your conditions are irrelevant. This is just an example. You can use any Boolean conditions you want in your own scripts to use the methods that I'm going to show you in a moment on how to generate your alerts. So let me remove all of this. So all we have here is a standard study script with overlay to true. We're getting some user input. The only user input we need is 4 different alert triggers. So by default, these are all turned off, but for this script, we can trigger 4 different alerts. We can trigger all of these at the same time by turning them all on and setting an alert, or we can select which ones we want to trigger. So first of all, we get our 4 user inputs, which are our alert inputs. So in your script, if you're going to use this method I'm teaching you today, you will need to add all of these Boolean inputs for whatever market conditions or price action conditions that your script detects and that you want to set alerts for. So the next thing I do is I just get an RSI value. We're using a 7-period RSI just so that we get more signals drawing onto the chart instead of a 14-period, which would draw far fewer. And then here is where I detect my signals for drawing to the chart and for triggering my alerts. So first we check, is the RSI overbought? So is our RSI value exceeding 70 or below 30 for oversold? And then the next 2 Boolean conditions we have is the RSI overbought and did we just get a bearish candle printing? So was the previous bar's RSI overbought and did the previous bar close bullish? And in fact, we can get rid of this check now that I'm thinking about it. We don't need that in there. So did the previous bar go overbought and did the current bar close bearish? So did it close less than it opened? And we should probably get rid of the equal sign too. Otherwise, we're going to get doji candles printing as well. So once again, we're detecting RSI overbought and oversold conditions, and then we're checking, do we have a bullish or bearish candle after that RSI condition was met? And then we're drawing our signals here. So if I save the script and I zoom in here, you can see that the chart is drawing up here. For example, the RSI has gone overbought, it's drawing red arrows. So we're plotting red triangle downs whenever the RSI is overbought and green triangle ups whenever the RSI is oversold. And then these purple labels, these purple arrows, mean that a bullish bar has printed after the RSI has gone overbought or oversold. So that's the quick rundown of the script. Let's get into how we separate our alerts. So the new alert function that TradingView have added to the PineScript language behaves very differently to the alert condition function. So traditionally, we would need to separate our alerts like this. I'll show you the old way first, and then I'll show you the latest way that works better. So the old traditional way would be you'd need 4 alert conditions. So I'd copy this, paste it 4 times. We need to check, is RSI overbought alert turned on? That's this setting here. Is that turned on, and do we have an RSI overbought condition? If this is true, this will trigger our alert condition. Then we have a title of RSI overbought and a message of RSI is overbought. And so I can copy this into these 4 functions here and play around with the actual conditions. And I'll skip this part just to save time. So here we are with our 4 alert conditions set up for our Boolean conditions. So our first one is the RSI overbought? And do we have RSI overbought alerts turned on? Second one is for oversold. Third one is the RSI overbought and do we get a bearish candle? And do we have that alert turned on in the settings menu, which is this one here? And then we have the oversold version. So is the RSI oversold, and did we get a bullish candle? So if I save the script now, the way that you would have to set this up in the past would be you'd come up to the alert dialog here, you'd select your script, and then you'd have all of your alert conditions here. So this is one way to separate your alerts. The benefit of this method is that it's more organized. You can actually see your alert titles here. So that's one benefit of doing this. The drawback is that you'd need to set an individual alert for each one of these if you wanted to have multiple alerts triggering, but not all of them triggering. If you wanted them all to trigger at the same time, that's easy. You just combine all of these Boolean conditions into one alert condition function. But Josh wants to separate all of his alerts so that they don't all trigger at the same time. So this is one method. This is the old method of doing that. The newest method, which I'll show you now, is much cleaner, much more organized. But the one drawback is when you select your alert here, you select your script. When you select this new alert function, you won't have each individual title here. It'll just all fall under one alert. And the way you would control those alerts is with these booleans here, or these settings in the interface that we set up here. So let's get into separating our alerts individually. I'm going to comment this generate alert triggers. And this new alert function works with if statements. So this alert condition function triggers on every tick on your chart, on your buy every time price moves or volume changes. This function is triggered, but it only triggers an alert if this Boolean condition is true. These new alert functions behave a little bit differently. So for this, we just pass the same condition here into our if statement. And then we need to indent the next line. And for this, we use the new function, which is just simply alert. There's no alert condition after it. It's just the alert function. And this function only takes two input parameters or two arguments. The first one is the message you want to trigger, the text message. The second parameter is the frequency of your alert. So with these new alerts, you can't come up into the settings menu here and select your alert and then play with these options. So you have only once per bar close, and once per minute. These new alert functions behave a little bit differently. We have a text message, and then we have our alert dot, and if you press control space, these are your frequency options for these new alert functions. So we have frequency all, we have frequency once per bar, and we have frequency once per bar close. So the one frequency missing here is once per minute. So if you need to set an alert that triggers once per minute, you'll need to use the alert condition function for that. But I'm sure TradingView will add once per minute frequencies to this alert function at some point. I'd be surprised if they don't. So anyway, let's write out our first alert here. So this one is going to be triggered if the RSI is overbought, and we have RSI overbought alert turned on in the settings menu. Now the main advantage, the major advantage of these new alert functions is that you can include a dynamic string as your message. So if you're familiar with alert conditions, you know that one of the major limitations of that function is that you can't pass in price data from your chart in an easy manner. So if we wanted to include the current RSI value in our alert message using an alert condition, we'd need to plot that onto our chart so that it shows up here, like this number down the RSI. We need to plot that onto our chart, and then we need to reference it using the special placeholder tags. So you need to reference whichever plot corresponded to your RSI plot. Well, with the new alert functions, we can simply add concatenate, it's called. The fancy name for this is concatenation. We are adding a string to this string. So we're joining two strings. So if we wanted to include the current RSI price, it's that simple. We just write RSI is overbought at, and then we can use the toString function, which will convert any number into a string or text. So this won't work. You need to turn this number into a string, but it's easy to do. You just use the toString function, inbuilt toString function. So there's our message. The next thing we need to do is set our alert frequency. So I'm going to set this one to once per bar. So this will trigger on any active bar on your chart whenever the RSI reading goes over 70. So if I save this script now, there's our first separated alert written. Now I'm going to copy this block of code and paste it down here and get rid of that comment and flip these to RSI oversold. change this to RSI oversold at, and now we are triggering RSI oversold alerts, but only if the user has turned this on. So at present, if you were to turn this on, click OK, come up to the alert section, the alert dialog. If you come to condition and select our script, this is the new alert function setting. So here are our alert condition alerts, and this one here, any alert function call, will trigger whenever any of these alert functions that we've written out are triggered by our if statement checks. So before we wrap up this lesson, let's finish writing out our next two alert conditions or alert functions, and that's going to be if the RSI overbought underscore bear alert is turned on and we have an RSI overbought underscore bear condition met, which remember we declared up here, then we want to trigger an alert. For this one, we're going to say RSI overbought at plus toString RSI, and then plus again, and then we're going to add one more bit of text here. We're going to say and bearish candle closed at, and then we can add another toString. We can add the closing price of the current bar to this alert. So this makes it really easy to pass data from your script to third-party APIs without the need of using those annoying plot special placeholder tags. So normally this would look more like this, plot underscore 3, for example, if your closing price was your fourth plot, because remember plot indexes start from 0, but we don't need to do this anymore. We can just simply use the toString function. And then of course we need to set our alert frequency. So for this one, I'm just going to set it to frequency once per bar close. So I only want this to trigger on confirmed bearish bars after the RSI has gone overbought, and we have our RSI overbought bear alert setting turned on. So once again, I can copy this block of code and change everything around. So RSI oversold bull alert, RSI oversold bull, change this to oversold, and change this to bullish. If I save the script, it should compile without any errors, and there we go. So that's it. Technically now we can remove all these alert conditions if we're not using them. And obviously you can use these alert conditions at the same time as these new alert functions. You don't need to use one or the other. We can leave this in here if we wanted to. Maybe I'll just move this to the bottom of our script. So now if the user wants to, they can come up here and they can choose from our alert condition options, or they can just select any alert function call. And whatever alert that they've turned on in the settings will trigger that any alert function call alert. So if we come up here, if I change my time frame to, let's change it to 15 seconds, and I turn just these, oh, I just realized I haven't changed the text of this alert. Let me change this to bull alert. So now, yeah, if we come up here and we turn just our bull and bear alerts on, and we come up to our alert dialog, we select our script, we select any alert function call. If I click create now, the script will only trigger alerts for our bull and bear candle conditions. So when the RSI goes oversold, an alert will not be triggered because we didn't turn it on here. But if the RSI goes oversold and then we print a bullish candle, then an alert will be triggered. And keep in mind that these settings only affect alerts before you set them. So if we turn these on now and I click OK, that's not going to trigger an alert for those two conditions unless I come back up here and I select this option again and create a new alert. So now let's just wait and see what happens, see if we get an alert triggered. I'll just leave the camera recording and we'll see what happens. So I've been waiting for quite a while now. I've been waiting for about 15 minutes for an alert to trigger on that 25-second time frame, and it's just not happening. I mean, this is the problem with trading Forex in Australia. It's lunchtime here and the markets are slow as heck. It's crazy. And you know what? I might even change markets. Let's go, since that's being wild today as usual. Maybe we'll have some volatility happening here. Any alert function create. Let's wait and see. RSI is overbought, but we're not triggering alerts because we're waiting for a bearish candle to print. And there we go. It's working. Should have done that from the beginning. Trust Bitcoin to be volatile when nothing else is. So now I'm going to delete this alert so I don't get that annoying sound happening again. And there you have it. So the RSI went overbought, but we didn't get an overbought alert because we didn't have this turned on. So that's one way of separating your alerts using PineScript. It's probably the easiest way, simplest way. Now, why would you do this, you might ask? Well, the main use case for this sort of approach to separating alerts would be for managing trading signals through a third-party automation API. So there are several services out there that you can send your TradingView alerts to, and you can use your alerts to tell that API how to manage your trades. So you could have a stop loss here, a stop loss price, or buy limit order price, for example. But for today's example, I wanted to keep it simple, and we'll cover third-party API automation in the future lesson. But that's it for now. I hope you found this interesting and helpful. If you didn't, then please send me an email and I'll try to clarify any confusion you might have. But that's it for today's lesson. I've got to run. I've got an important appointment today, so I will see you guys in the next lesson. Take care. Good luck with your trading, and thanks for being a part of this community.